A gloomy November morning in 2011 was extremely difficult for the employees of the Russian Investigative Committee. They took turns going out to smoke nervously, unable to stand the stench in the apartment. One of the witnesses fainted and suffered a nosebleed. When the woman came to her senses, she became really hysterical, screaming that she didn't want to touch anything in the house and asking to be let outside. The Soviet interior of the apartment looked completely ordinary, with lots of bucks and porcelain figurines on the cupboards. But you'd think it was an ordinary Russian apartment, except for one feature, namely, 26 dolls made from dead children's bodies. This gruesome find in Nizhny Novgorod shocked all of Russia. The man who created such horrible toys was nicknamed Dollmaker. Surprisingly, but it was he who managed to hide his hobby, even living under the same roof with his parents. Where he took the bodies and what moved him, what terrible ritual he underwent at the age of 13, and who fell in love with the creepy Dollmaker. Despite all this, today you will learn everything. Anatoly Moskvin was an excellent student and a quiet child who was constantly bullied at school. There is information that in the 3rd grade he experienced violence, but serious mental problems in the boy began 13 years after he underwent the rite of marriage with a deceased woman. On March 4, 1979, School No. 184 was collecting waste paper. The children went around the entrances, ringing all the doors and demanding old papers. Near one of the entrances stood a coffin lid. The day before, a girl had died there. It happened like this. 11-year-old Natasha Petrova was taking a bath, and at that moment the light went off. The girl's father, Anatoly, died back in 1971. So there was no man's hand in the apartment, and the women used an old portable. Soon the power was back on. Coming out of the bathroom, Natasha touched a bare wire with the end of a wet towel and died instantly from the discharge. Coming out of the entrance with piles of waste paper, Anatoly and his classmates came straight to the coffin. Apparently, Natasha's mother was a member of some sect. There were no classmates at the funeral, but several dozen women and men in black clothes came. They all held burning candles and sang in an incomprehensible language. Feeling that the children had committed a crime, they had stolen someone else's waste paper. They tried to get away from the scary place. Noticing the children, several men rushed after us in pursuit. Soon Moskvin was grabbed by the shoulder, shaking with fear, and brought to the black gathering. The singing stopped. A tearful woman, apparently the mother of the deceased, gave him a large Hungarian apple and kissed him on the forehead. She led Anatoly to the coffin and, promising lots of candy, oranges, and money, told him to kiss the deceased. He burst into tears and begged to be released, but the sectarians insisted. Everyone again chanted prayers in a language I did not understand, and an adult forcefully bent his head to the wax forehead of a girl in a lace bonnet. Moskvin had no choice but to kiss 3 times where ordered. Then he was told to repeat the conspiracy, one line of which was particularly clear in his memory. I could give birth to a daughter. I can help from all troubles. When the incantation was over, Anatoly was told to take a candle and dribble the wax on the breast of Natasha's blue dress with red trim. Then they gave him 2 worn brass rings, told him to put one on the dead bride's finger and put the other on Moskvin himself. Without letting go of Anatoly's hand, they went to the bus. Next, they went to the cemetery. On the way, the woman took his honest pioneer word to no one, at least 40 days, not to tell anyone about this incident. The first lump of clay was thrown by his mother. The second was entrusted to Moskvin to throw. Immediately after the ritual, the boy was brought back to the entrance, given 10 rubles in his briefcase, in which some handkerchiefs and rags were stuffed for some reason. At the first corner, he threw the ring and handkerchiefs into the snow, and with 10 rubles he bought books about animals and Mongolian stamps. Toward the end of the school year, the dead Natasha began to dream about Moskvin almost every night, singing nonsensical songs. Soon the dead bride demanded that he start studying magic. The boy was against it. He went to the village in the summer, and the night visits seemed to stop, but resumed the first night when he returned to the city. Natasha appeared as if in a haze, and Moskvin began to feel her proximity by a peculiar coldness. He began to hallucinate and have night delusions. The doctor to whom his parents turned for help explained this phenomenon by hormonal withdrawal. It went on like this for about a year. Finally, Natasha announced that if after that the schoolboy did not want to study magic, then she threw him. They said that later he would look for her and harass her, but it would be too late. Having grown up, Moskvin began to teach philology and foreign languages at the university. He was a real polyglot, knew 13 languages, but at some point the man had a conflict with colleagues, and they insisted on his departure. After that, Moskvin began to earn money by tutoring at home, writing local history articles for local newspapers, and practicing necropolistics, a discipline that studies cemeteries. He even prepared a book about cemeteries, but did not manage to publish it. At the same time, he became interested in the occult, was a member of the Society of Luciferians, which distinguished them from Satanists conducting rituals with dead animals. Passed the credit for black magic, gave a vow of celibacy and abstinence from alcohol and smoking, rejected Christianity, and considered himself a pagan. He translated the book The History of the Swastika and authored a supplement to it, The Cross Without the Crucified. Moskvin was single and dreamed of children. He was not allowed to have a child by the guardianship authorities. Because of his meager salary as a university lecturer, his parents also refused to help him with the procedure. Then he told his mother that he would practice black magic and get in contact with the spirits of the dead, mummify their bodies, and keep them at home. His mother replied that he could do whatever he wanted. Anatoly was very upset and went for a walk in the cemetery Redetna, where there was a grave of Natasha, married to him, which he often visited. That same day Moskvin discovered the unremarkable grave of another girl. A few days later, he came and dug it up to the coffin. With a chisel, the man hollowed out holes in the lid at the headboard. He pulled out what was left of the body. It was in very bad condition, covered with maggots of meat flies and badly decomposed. The girl was dressed in a white blouse, black skirt, white tights, and shoes. The child had long hair. Then Moskvin decided to try to mummify it for the first time, carried the body to a remote corner of the cemetery and buried it. To properly mummify a body, you need baking soda and salt. These substances he called vaccine. He bought these substances at the store, and at the dump he found old capron stockings and made bags out of them. He put baking soda and salt in them and tied them to the girl's remains. He changed these sacks once a week and dried the wet ones right there in the cemetery. He told people who paid attention to him that he was feeding birds and taking care of dead children who had no relatives. After 2.5 months, Moskvin wrapped the body in different clothes and carried it to his home in a backpack. Then for 2 days he restored the body, stuffed rags inside, put fresh female pads. Anatoly had a human scalp, so he put it in the mummy. Then he sewed up the body with thread and made a wax mask on the face. He melted candle wax directly onto the mummy's face, then covered it with nail polish he found in a dumpster. After that, he wrapped tights around the body and put clothes on it that he also found in a dumpster. For the next 6 months he slept with this doll. At night, other dolls gradually appeared in his house. Almost all of them were in his room, and only one of them, Masha, he put in his parents' room. They could not imagine that they lived in the same room with a corpse for several months. They thought that their son made dolls from improvised materials. Anatoly arranged the dolls on the sofas, some of them imitating tea parties. A children's toy set was placed on a table for them. Mechanisms for musical toys or boxes were embedded inside the mummies. When touched, they would say something like "Daddy, I love you," or sing the song "Mishkarili like honey." In 2 years, Moskvin unearthed 26 bodies of girls between the ages of 3 and 11. The police received complaints about the desecration of graves, but no one could find the vandal. Moskvin acted with great care and sophistication. He came to the cemetery, tore up the graves, and law enforcement threw all the forces to find the culprit. It is on this August, and Moskvin himself the next day came to another cemetery and there did his work. The scientist was punctured on the weather forecast. Anatoly Moskvin expected that the rain would begin at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it began only 6 in the evening. That's why the operatives, on fresh traces, managed to find in the cemetery shoeprints 43 size, a can of paint with fingerprints. The police checked the list of suspects, which already included Moskvin, and came to his apartment, where he was found a real crypt. The head of the investigative department called Moskvin's case exceptional and unparalleled in modern forensics. Colleagues spoke of the defendant as a kind, brilliant, and punctual specialist researcher. Oddities were attributed to the quirks of an intellectual. On the basis of medical expertise, Anatoly Moskvin was recognized as needing psychiatric treatment. In total, he spent almost 11 long years in a psychiatric clinic. In the hospital, he is visited by his parents and his fiancée, a 25-year-old graduate of the Faculty of Philology. Having learned about the puppeteer from the news, the girl attended all the sessions on the case of Anatoly Moskvin and assured as if she were his daughter. However, as it became known during the meetings, Moskvin has no children and cannot be. Then the girl decided to become the legal wife of Moskvin. They are going to sign as soon as the man is released from the mental hospital. Genius and insanity very often walk side by side, and in this story intertwines horror and pity for a lonely man. The worst part is that this could be happening next door in an ordinary apartment, and no one would even have a clue.